Hi there, and welcome to another chapter of the electric BMW 320i project. Yeah, I know, I should be driving the car right now. Well, believe it or not, the very next video is, because the car is all primed and ready to go. Just have one little problem to solve, and it will be rolling. So my very next video should be driving down the road. This one I just wanted to put together because it's been 3 months. Been not doing too much on the car, going on vacation, golfing, biking, same things during the summer. In fact, had a really nice vacation in Italy. Here's a picture of me and my girlfriend Lisa in front of the Colosseum in Rome. We were in Rome for many days and spent some other time in other parts of Italy. It was really great with her and her family. So what I did before I went on vacation, because I knew I'd eventually get to the car, was because I got all the batteries together and everything was all set, I charged up the pack to about 30 amp hours, which was like about 375 volts, and thought, it should be just fine. That's a nice state of charge for the batteries to sit in for a couple months, and that's how I left it. So when I got back a few weeks ago and I got to working on the car, I was actually wanted to check out this AVC2, which is the J1772 interface module, and I had wired that in. I wanted to test it, so I turned on the car and I looked over the JLD 404, which I have set up, and I couldn't believe it. It's like it should have read 370 something volts, and I thought it was a mistake. It read 77. I'm like, 77, what? And I went around, checked all the connections, and I went out and I tested a battery in the front box, and sure enough, yeah, below a volt. All the batteries below 1 volt, which is really bad state of charge for those lithium cells. So I went through and I measured the voltage on every cell. Average was about 0.6, the lowest was about 0.25, and the highest was 0.85. There was nothing that was at 0 volts, which is a good thing. It probably shows, I did a good job of bottom balancing before, but still, that's really low voltage for those cells. So I took one out, and first thing I did was I just put it on a power supply and charged it up to 2.7 volts, and it seemed happy. It took at an amp, took about an hour to do that. So that's like 1 amp hour went into it. At that voltage, I could put it on my ProLab charger, and I put it on there, and at 10 amps it charged all the way up to 3.65, 64 amp hours, so doesn't appear to have any real degradation in it. Looks like it's fine. So the next thing I did was I went through and charged up all the batteries individually or in groups to up to 2.7 volts, so then I could turn on the Brusa and fully charge the whole pack. And so I'll show you some parts of that, and fortunately the whole pack came back to life. I was able to get 60 amp hours into it. All the batteries except one were fine. They were like at 3.4 volts during the charge, and one went to 3.65, and so I replaced that one, and now I should be able to charge up to even higher than 60 amp hours. But that was just the start of my troubles. Having a discharge like that, I still haven't figured out what the problem was. The maintenance switches were all open, and the only thing that was connected was the BMS, and I still have not figured out if that's the culprit, but I will be looking at that very closely. And I also finally got some of the interior finished, and I'll be showing how I struggled with the carpeting and getting the seats in and everything. And then the next video, as I said, it's all ready to go, as you'll see that, and but let's take a look at this one. The last bit of connections to make before putting the instrument cluster back in. All these wires I had to cut before had to be reconnected, both sides. It's nice connectors that go back into the instrument cluster, and I had to make my own, just in this multi-wire guy that brings all the wires together to plug down into the JevQ that's going to run the instrument cluster. So last bit of wiring. The next thing is put it in. Here's something I'm trying for terminating wires on a barrier strip instead of just crimping and putting wires in, using these barrel connectors that you see they have a crimp. It's basically a nice tool that does that, and then I put a little bit of heat shrink over that to strain relieve it, and then use one of these things that basically are designed for large wires, but then the barrel goes right in there very nicely and clamps down on it. Makes a really nice solid connection. So we'll see how well that works. I'm basically doing all the under dash wiring with that, and I did use these inside the crossover box I did for the wiring in the engine bay. So nice little system. Starting to look more like a drivable car. Got the wheels on, front and back, and another big thing, the whole front end put back together. Kidney grills, headlights, bumper, air dam. The only thing left to do is the turn signals. I'm waiting on some LED lights for that, but then I'm going to put the hood on. Just make sure it still fits alright, or at least fit it up. And then there'll be the last few things inside the passenger compartment, like the seats and the steering wheel, and it'll be ready to roll. Recovering from my catastrophic discharge, tweaking up all the batteries in groups of 12 to 18 with my Keithley power supplies source meter, just driving on a little over an amp and doing sections of the battery, bringing them up to 2.7 volts so that when they're all at that voltage, they'll be at high enough voltage for the Brusa to start charging the pack. Just one more set of 18 in this rear trunk box and be ready to try and put the Brusa on. After spending almost a week trimming up individual batteries to bottom balance them, I now have the whole pack connected and charging. And see here, it's up to 398 volts. Everything looks really good. There's no temperature rise. I've been checking individual battery voltages, nothing out of the ordinary. And everything in here is working well. And almost up to a third of the pack, 19 amp hours. So everything looks good. Charge it all the way up to whatever I get at 3.5 volts per battery, and it should be 60 some plus amp hours, but I'll just have to see. And then once that's done, maybe I'll put the seats in and the steering wheel and go for a ride. Well, almost at 60 amp hours, and looks really good. Most of the batteries are still sitting right around 3.42 to 3.46, so should be able to get a lot more than 60 amp hours into these batteries, which is what I found on the bench. They usually take about 66, but I think I'll just run it up to maybe something in the mid 60s and leave it at that and see how they settle. Haven't seen anything with any high voltage, which is really good. That means nothing really got damaged. Everything's very close, and been measuring the voltage, been measuring the temperature too, and don't see any hot spots, so looks really good. There it is, 60 amp hours. I think I've discovered the source of my catastrophic discharge. I have the reference for the BMS, which is the 0 point in the battery pack, which is this point right here. I have that wire tied directly to that instead of going through the contactor box, and the contactor box actually has two contactors to completely isolate the battery pack, and that goes to this bus bar system I have here. So that's really where the BMS should be connected if it's not going to monitor the pack when it's off. And that's probably that point, because now there is a connection between there and the rest of the pack outside of all the switching. Even this disconnect, that just disconnects the positive side but not the negative side. So I'm going to have to move that down to the bus bar, but I think that's where the problem is. Alright, fun time putting the new carpeting in. So, got it laid out, figured out the hole for the gear shift and the emergency brake. See, it has nice little contours for the seat posts and for the front and the transmission tunnel. So next thing is to try and stick it in there and see how it fits up. It's made extra long. It's like about 3 inches too long this way and 3 inches too long that way, so I have to do some trimming once it's in. But here's the start. Well, it's starting to go in. Definitely going to have to take the handbrake off. There's no way I'm going to get that on there through that little hole. But next thing to figure out is where to cut the hole for the gas pedal and get that up behind the pedals. But man, what a chore. Not as easy as they make it look on their YouTube videos. Well, after about an hour of struggling with it and cutting stuff here and there, I only got it in, almost. Gas pedal still needs a little work, but everything else seems to be fitting up. And there's another piece that goes on the back here to go up the end of the bottom of the back seat. And I just have to make the holes bigger for the gear shift and the brake. And I can start putting the center console in and the seats. Oh boy. Here's what it looks like from the other side. It's still kind of lumpy. Gonna have to work out, get everything cut and the holes cut for the bolts for the bucket seats, but it's getting there. Well, it's getting closer. Got the center console in, the steering wheel, brakes ready. I just have to put the seat in. I got the holes cut in the carpet. Not too happy with the carpeting, even though it did have these contours made up. It's like too much material here in the middle. And I don't know if I can get that glued down or not. It's just doesn't look very good. I'm surprised they don't have that designed better. I don't think that you could actually pull this anymore, because like there's the foot pad and that's where the throttle should go, so it's centered up correctly. Oh well, that's the problem with the aftermarket carpet. It's just not cut. It's cut too generic, even though it's very specific for this car. But I think a couple more hours and get a few more things done. It might be ready to roll down the driveway. Okay, one seat in. Oh, that was not easy. I don't remember it being that hard to get them out, but bolts really didn't want to start. But getting ready, just going to have to go through the punch list and see what else got to do. One big thing is I need to torque all the lug nuts up on all the wheels because they're just hand tight. So as you can see, it's ready to roll. The wheels are on, bumpers, lights, everything is there, and even a driver's seat and steering wheel, so it's ready to go. Unfortunately, I did discover one big problem right when I was ready to run it, and that was first thing happened was the DMOC wouldn't output any commands to the Siemens. I'd step on the throttle and nothing, and the throttle and the brake had all been calibrated and working. I mean, I showed that in my last video, everything was working. So I don't know what was going on, so I started poking around, and I really couldn't believe it, but I found I had voltage on the maintenance switch with the car off, and the maintenance switch should be always neutral with the car off because the contactors are before the maintenance switch, at least the one that's in the front hood engine compartment. And I started measuring things, and I found out that the contactors in the contactor box are all fused, which means there's no way to electrically or electronically turn off the high voltage, and there's really no way to pre-charge the DMOC. And so I'm working on building another pre-charge circuit, but for right now I don't know what caused that. I did find that the JevQ had some configuration data, like the throttle calibration and the port settings were wrong. I don't know how that got changed, but before the car can roll out the driveway, I have to build that little pre-charge circuit so I can pre-charge the DMOC and get the connection going. But that shouldn't be too difficult, and I have all the parts for that now. So thanks for watching, and look for the very next video of me rolling down the road.